Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, family. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Mental House with me, your host, Khadija. You know, somebody called the real mother of civil rights, Ida B. Wells Barnett, because of her fearless reporting um, during a time where we experienced some of the most horrific lynchings, in America. In fact, it was so bad that they called it the Red Summer. So, you know, I think it was between 1917 and 1921. You had more white riots than any other time. And I think we're kind of coming back to that time. And it's important that you know what you're dealing with, who you're dealing with, and govern your life accordingly. So I was looking through some paperwork, and I came across an article that Ida B wrote. She said, on Sunday, July 8th, I returned to Chicago and made my report to the Negro Fellowship League that evening. This meeting passed resolutions which recommended, first, that a committee be sent to Governor Lawley with the facts that I had collected, asking, number one, um, that a searching investigation be made into the reasons why had not a single shot was fired by the militia for the protection of black men and women and children in all that 48 hours of rioting. Um, she was very concerned, just so these are her writings, that in many instances the soldiers combined with the police in searching black men, thus making it safe for the mob to beat and kill them. They pretty much deputized, and this is for all my brothers who voted for Trump, So I think it's really important that y'all know that y'all cut off y'all nose and spite your face, because America never liked you at all. It's not enough room for alpha males. It's not enough room for the two alpha males. So one got to go. So the white man has made you put your tail between your legs. And he's done that with fear and, murder and things of that nature. She says, I'm demanding that a court martial be instigated to find out the cause of this neglect of duty and to punish the offenders. Second, that the state of Illinois be requested to make provisions for the care of thousands of men, women, and children who have been driven from their homes and were now being taken care of by the people of St. Louis, together with the Red Cross workers and the assistance of the colored citizens of St. Louis. Third, to inquire what action, if any, the state would take to restore order in East St. Louis to such an extent that the people might go back to their homes and their work and demanding protection for those who do. Say nothing new, family. Say nothing new. Fact that I would beg to say it was worse. And sometimes we get comfortable and we forget about just how bad our ancestors and the people who came before us had it, living with these beasts of burden. Um, Third, to inquire that what action, if any, the state will take to restore order. I said that. Acting on these recommendations, the Negro Fellowship League voted a committee of 5 persons to wait upon the governor. The following committee was appointed. I.B.W. Barnett was the chairman. J.W. Robinson, pastor of St. Mark's A&E Church. Professor R.T. Greener, B.W. Fitz, and Mrs. William Farrow, who had raised upwards of $6 in her effort to contribute towards expenses of the trip. That was a lot of money. At the meeting held at Bethel A&M Church on Monday night, July 9th, through the courtesy of the pastor, Reverend W.D. Cook, and the trustees of Bethel, this committee was enlarged by the addition of 2 persons, Reverend W.D. Cook, who was made chairman, and H.A. Watkins. The meeting gave $52 to pay the expenses of the committee to Springfield. They left on a midnight train and had an interview with the Governor Loudon on Tuesday, the 10th of July, at which meeting were present besides the governor, adjacent General Frank Dickerson and Colonel John Marshall, as well as our own committee. The governor listened to us very intently and then said the state will do everything they could to reestablish law and order, and that a court martial had been ordered to investigate the conduct of the state militia. He said that the state had no emergency fund from which to do anything for the refugees in St. Louis, Missouri, but he called up the Red Cross chairman, Mr. O'Connell, and asked him to take the matter up and see what could be done. That's the governor now. It's crazy. The interview was very satisfactory, with the exception of the fact that Governor Loudon took occasion to advise us against incendiary talk. The writer told him that if he had seen women whose husband had been beaten to death, whose children had been thrown into flames and in the river, who whose women were burned to death, he would not say it was incendiary talk to denounce such outrages. In response to my statement that 50 persons whom I had interviewed told me that the invariable customs of a soldier was to search the men and take from them even their pocket knives, thus leaving them at the mercy of the mob. Or they would stand by and see the work well done. He told me to get the names of the persons who would testify to the effect that they were placed in his hands. Mrs. Farrow and I took the train at once for St. Louis and went immediately to the municipal lodging house, where papers had announced that this lodging house would be closed on Wednesday, and the statement had also been made that the Honorable Charge Najil had made a complaint about Missouri taking care of Illinois' people. We expected to find the hundreds that we saw the Friday before, but in 4 days, the thousands that were there had dispersed. Some had gone back south. Others had accepted the invitations of the Chamber of Commerce and gone back to the industrial plants, to work by the day, but they came back every night to St. Louis to sleep. Hundreds had gone up to Pennsylvania and other centers of labor where they needed help. There were only 25 persons in the municipal lodging house, and these 25 had already secured places to go. For this reason, the lodging house was closing its doors for those who had been beaten, persecuted, and ran out of their homes and robbed even of their wearing apparel, were taking up new courage and utilizing the only capital they had, the labor of their hands. Having been asked by the governor uh, to get the names and addresses of the people who made charges against the state militia for failure to do their duty and or for assisting the mob, both Mrs. Farrow and I began as soon as we returned to St. Louis to collect such stories. The first person I talked to was a man named John Avant, whose foot was so swollen that he could not wear his shoes. He says it hurt his foot run. He hurt his foot running, and that he worked at the CB&O, and that he was without. He was with about 25 others who came out of their work on Tuesday morning. They were sitting or standing around the restaurant as like they usually did, where they ate, when 6 soldiers and 4 or 5 policemen came upon them suddenly and shot into the crowd, wounding 6. One of the number one of the number has since died. They also were searched, and even their pocket knives were taken from them. One of the shots fired took off the arm of a woman who was working in the restaurant. A half dozen others told me that they went back over into East St. Louis to work, but that they came back to Missouri Stride to sleep at night. The railroad companies for which they worked gave car fare together with 2 meals a day and paid them $3 and $4 a day, where previous they had been paid only $2 and $2.50. They said they would do this as long as the soldiers remained. So, the story of Mrs. Mary Lewis. The story of Mary Lewis. She saw the mob kill a man a few doors away. She became frightened and told her husband she would have to leave. Man at house named Hugh McMurray told her she could come to his house in St. Louis, as she knew no one in St. Louis. I put on my suit, a clean dress, on 4 small children, and then got on the car with them. The mob yelled, "There she goes! There she goes!" But they did not fire, so she got away. While the house was still in sight, the mob had broken windows and set it all on fire, shooting into it while the policemen watched. Sister was in the house but escaped being shot and was badly stoned. Husband, though shot, got up and ran about 40 feet before they finished him off. He was heard to beg Mr. Warren not to let them kill him. William Lewis, an employee of Wabash R.R. and Company, was on his way home from work, sitting between his employer and his employer's son in the streetcar when the mob grabbed him, shot him to pieces, and then put a rope around his neck and dragged him into the streets, all while the police watched. James Frizzer was another one. He was 53 years of age, addressed where he worked, lived in St. Louis since he was a child, having come there from Montgomery, Alabama. When he was leaving his work Monday afternoon, July 2nd, 5 men attacked him, beat him, and shot him through the chest. While he was helpless, some soldiers came and took him to St. Mary's Hospital in East St. Louis. He stayed there 3 days, then left and went to the county hospital in St. Louis. The bullet had not been extracted. He was married. He had no children. But he and his wife lived in Cairo, Illinois. Now, if any of y'all think that that's far-fetched from happening and it couldn't happen today, I got a bridge in Brooklyn I can sell you. What y'all think about this story? And there's plenty of them. There's plenty of them. Plenty of them. With a climate just as this climate is today. I don't know. What say you? Tell me what you think. Tell me what you think about these stories. Or Ida B. Wells. Or if you got a story that you'd like to share. Or an article from Ida B. Wells. Let me know. And I'll see you in the next video.